as I prepared for this week, I thought about what haven't I talked about, and I started reading a little bit of Ernest Holmes, and out came the idea of spiritual self-reliance. And I thought that would be an interesting topic. I don't know that I've ever spoken on that topic before. So I've been allowing it to just sort of settle in my mind and ask the question, what would it be to be spiritually self-reliant? So I came up with this. Spiritual self-reliance is an inner knowing of truth. And I think what we've done in our lives is we have stopped this inner knowing, and what we've done is we started relying on outside things. We start going, well, this book says this book says this person says that person says this. If you start doing that, you're going to get all mucked up. Because here's the thing that we know is that there's no one right way for anything. Do you get that? No one right way for everything. I'm going to go back, way back, 1972. Some of you weren't even born in 72. I was getting married in 72. December 17th, 1972, I got married, 3:30 in the afternoon. I want you to know there were people that came to me and said, don't get married. There were a lot of people that went to Gene and said, don't marry that man. He's not good. I was a playboy. And then I met her. Now, it took some time for me to change. I probably played around on her for about 25, 30 years. I'm kidding. But the idea is that people didn't like the way I was in relationship because I was different. But here's what I knew. I knew at the core of everything that I am, if I did what everyone else did, I would have the experience of everybody else. So I've got my mom and dad telling me how to be in relationship. And I'm looking at them and I'm saying, no. My mother, when she was dying, she says, I should have divorced your dad after the first year. And she stood with him for 62 years. We no longer have to play that game. And so I said, okay. And then I looked at Gene's parents and I said, whoa. Don't want that relationship, so they're giving us advice. The beauty of it is, though, when we made the decision to get married, Gene's parents still wanted to control us. My parents accepted the fact that they had no choice, and they allowed us. It meant everything in the difference between the relationships we had with her parents and the relationships we had with my parents. And I say that because when you give people the freedom to express, they never forget that. They want to be with you. So I come back to the spiritual self-reliance. I don't know why I knew that Gene was the right person to marry. I just knew. It made no sense. Had a year to go in college. She had 2 years to go in college. We had no money. We had one car. We had no place to live. We had no jobs. We had nothing. But something in me said, do this. And I listened. Now, was it easy all the way here? We've had this. Every couple has this. To think that you don't have this is silly. The whole idea that you can have a one-sided life of all joy all the time is going to send you into a state where you're going to have to get on antidepressants, be locked up in a straitjacket because it's an unrealistic expectation, because contrast is eternal. You have to have contrast to feel. You have contrast to grow. You have to have contrast to build new desires and how to yourself at greater levels. So let's go on. People with spiritual self-reliance have a deep conviction that they are attuned to an infinite intelligence. Not only are they attuned, but they're one with it. So you understand that it's not just your little mind, there's an intelligence. Think about this. Whether you're religious or not, there's an intelligence there, because how did this cosmos get created? How did this universe get created with all of this balance? Because the universe is always in balance. You've got billions of solar system, planets and stars, all in this dance of weaving and inter-outing, and there's destruction and there's growth, but with destruction there's always growth. See, that's really key. So when I'm on my journey in Mount Kailash, one of the things in Indian, Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist, Hindu, Jainist, and Buddhist, those are religions, they believe that Mount Kailash is the center of the universe. So it's not Jerusalem in their view like the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslim feel. It is Mount Kailash is the center of the universe. And they believe that Shiva, the god Shiva, is there. When they talk about a god in Hinduism, they're talking about an aspect of the infinite. But because it's so old, they painted caricatures on it so people could identify with the characters, but it's an allegory. It's like a symbolism of what it was. And so Shiva was the destroyer because they understood that for you to have a new life, your old life had to go away. Do you get that? You can't hold on to the new and reach for the hold on to the old and reach for the new. The old and you make room for the new. So they believe that Shiva was in this mountain. This is where Shiva lived. And so by taking the trek around this mountain, this has been done for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They believe that the going around was a healing. It was a cleansing because it's so physically taxing that mentally and physically you're drained. You've got nothing left. And when you're drained and you've got nothing left, you are open to receive new. You will surrender into that. In all my other journeys to India and into Peru, those were the very things that came to me. When I reached a point where I was no longer physically and mentally able to deal with what I was facing, I had to surrender. And in the moment of surrender, a wisdom came from within me that made me understand better where I am and what life is. So it's about opening to that. So it's about you have to be attuned to the idea there is an infinite. And yes, you're a perfect and whole expression of it. So one of the things that I do, and I set the intention is, I'm always open to receive a greater intelligence from that which is in me that is wanting to receive it. I never prayer work to something outside. I don't even do ask or beseeching when I'm doing prayer work. I'm basically saying, I'm making a declaration that I know that within me is this wisdom and I'm calling it forth. And when I call it forth, I then just don't ask, I just be quiet and I know the answer comes. It may not be that day, it may be in the middle of the thing. Answers come to me all the time. Someone wanted prayer on something, the next morning they said, an answer came from me, call this person, they need to see this person. I call that person, tell them you need to see this person. You know when it's right. You just know. You don't have to rationalize it. True wisdom does not need to be rationalized. Rationalization is how the ego controls you. But we've been tuned out to this idea of an inner knowing, and we try to justify everything based on our ego and pleasing our ego, and that's where we're destined to just have misery. When we're spiritually self-reliant, we are a positive without being aggressive. This is really big. I'm real positive about what I believe. I'm real positive about where my life is going. I'm really positive about the idea where other people can go as well. But guess what? I don't have to take away that ability for anyone else to experience what they want to experience when they want to experience it. I don't have to be aggressive as I share this. I don't have to tell people they're wrong. Do you get that? When you know something, you don't worry about whether other people get it. They will get it when they're ready to get it. We're all on a unique and individual journey, and we must embrace that idea. Because when we try to force our beliefs on someone, we actually push them away. Because what is the greatest thing we have in our lives that we want more than anything, anything, anything? It's the F word. Freedom. That's the single most important thing that we want. In a marriage, you want freedom to be yourself. With your parents, you want freedom to be your unique self. As a child, you want your parents to give you the freedom to be you. When that freedom is choked off, what do? We rebel. We strike out. Sometimes it takes a lot of pushing back, a lot of, sucking it in, repressing. We repress it, and then we explode like a monstrous pimple into the universe when we bust. I know, what an individual. Do you remember that when you were a teenager? It was a ball. You go to the locker, boop, there it goes, you, I'm free of that pimple. Anyway, new people get used to this. When we're spiritually self-reliant, We're self-assured without being egotistical. When you know something, you know it. You just know it. And it's not that you know better than anyone else. You just know what's right for you, and you understand that everyone is going to get it when they're ready, and they'll get it based on where they are. We are empowered in our actions without becoming intolerant. Think about that. We understand that we have the power to create our lives. And we have to also understand that so does everyone else. And if they're not consciously creating their life, that's okay. It's where they are, and who are we to judge? Remember what we talk about in self-love. You cannot love and judge. They're mutually cannot be together. It's one or the other. When we're in judgment, not discernment. Discernment is different than judgment. Can you get that? I can discern that my wife has habits that I will not embrace. But because I've discerned it, I don't tell her that she can't do it. She can do whatever she wants. That's her life. If I was in judgment, I would say, you really ought to stop that. That's really embarrassing, or this, or that, or that, or that. That's when there's the emotion that comes into play. When we're in judgment, there's emotion behind that, and we feel that unless that person changes, I can't feel good. Did you get that? When you're spiritually self-reliant, you don't need anyone else to feel better. You know that all your job is for you to be at peace with who you are and to be living your vision and living your dream. 3 steps to spiritual self-reliance. We must develop a deep awareness and conviction that we are one. What brings us that conviction? There's only one thing that I know that really helps us get there, and that's meditation. Meditation is the one single tool, and that tool is taught more in the East than it is in the West. Here's what I understand about the difference between the Eastern religions and the Western religions. The Eastern religions were about letting go and being at one. So they would go in a cave for years and years and years and meditate. The West, on the other hand, what did Jesus say? It's done unto you as you believe. He was giving you the key to how do you change your life? How do you create what you want? He said you got to change your belief. And that's basically what it's all about. In the West, it's about how do we get something? But you see, it's really not one or the other. It's a combination of the two. We connect into the divine. We go into that place. When we go into the place, our ego moves away. We're in that stillness. It may be for a fraction of a second, but we're in there. Our mind is clear, and in that fraction of a second, we're now open to receive. It's only when we let go that we're open to receive a new idea, a new sense, a new way of being. And then once we do that, we must always believe in our spiritual self as forever all as one. We must understand that we're always a part of the oneness. This physical body will be gone. The personality of our ego will be gone. But the essence of who we are, that which is breathing us, that which is causing our heart to beat, that which is observing us, which is more than our individual mind, for no better word, I'll use the word soul. It's that aspect that's the divine, that's a part that cannot be separated from us, but there's also the ego mind, and there's the physical body with our emotions and our senses and all of that. But there's something greater that is controlling this mind, controlling this body, controlling these emotions that we forget that's there. I can remember in 2013 when I was in India, and we were in Uttarkashi on the foothills of the Himalayas on the banks of the Ganga River, and we were there in silent meditation supposedly for 16 days, and we got caught in the worst flooding in the history of that region for 100 years. And I can remember as Naranjan and I were leading this group of 40 people out from the ashram along the foothills with a 750-foot drop into the river to get to a helicopter pad 4 hours away to get us out of there. I remember watching myself up here, somewhere above me, doing it. That's when I realized the power of meditation, because I'd been in silent meditation for like 5 or 6 days. And so I was able to be outside of the physical experience, and that's where I drew my strength. Because I'll tell you, the day before we took out the people, Naranjan and I was older. Naranjan was like the second oldest or third oldest person there. I was older by more than 20 years anyone else on that trip. And we decided we had to figure out if we could make the journey to the helicopter pad. And we made it there, and I'm going to tell you, it was scary. I thought one time I was sliding down, I lost it. I was sliding, and this Sherpa grabbed my hand, a little 120-pound guy grabbed my hand, caught me. Now, Ranjan at the time was 6'4", and he was about 230 at the time. And he went down about 3 times. That little guy grabbed him. He was like a guardian angel that was with us. So we went 4 hours, got there. We got there, and you're exhausted. Can you imagine? You're exhausted beyond anything. Because remember, you're going through, there's no paths. You're going through thick brush, and it's muddy. And you don't have hiking clothes on. And you're doing that, and you get there, and you finally get to the captain of the army who's there at the helicopter pad, and you're there with him, and he says, we're not coming to get you. You've got to get your people here, then we'll fly them out. And Naranja looked at me and says, we got to go back now. And I go, because I'm drained. So we start going back. About a third of the way in, it's pitch dark. So not only are we doing the journey back, we're doing it in the dark, and we're exhausted. And you just trust, because you can only trust. If you don't trust, you're dead. That's when you tap into spiritual self-reliance. That's when you know you don't have to rely on just your physical abilities. You know that there's something more that you can tap into. When I got back, I was drained beyond anything I can tell you. And I looked at Naranjan and I said, do we have to do this again tomorrow? And he went, that's the only way we get out. So you tap into inner knowing. We must establish and maintain a continual communion with the intelligence that is with us. It's about knowing that it's not just the little mind, but it's the big mind that you're tapped into. That's one of the things that I go back when I think about Catholicism, when I was raised as a Catholic. And we would have communion in a service where we'd walk up and they would take the host and they would say the body of Christ, and you say, you say all that stuff. I forgot some of it already. I didn't forget the contrition thing, you know. When you go into the contrition, you got to do penance. Bless me, Father, for it's been a week since my last confession. These are my sins. I've had 42,000 impure I was in the seminary at 15. All I had at 15 were impure thoughts. And you know what? I was confessing that. Why? It was a natural thing. Every guy. How many men today still have impure thoughts? Don't raise your hand, your wives are next to you. Let me tell you, if you think great spiritual leaders don't have impure thoughts, let me be the first example to step forward and say, I do. You do. You have your mind does crazy things. You let that go and you try to re-tap into the infinite. That's what you're trying to do. Okay. We're rooted in the infinite. We understand that we live in it because it lives in us. If there wasn't the infinite in us, we wouldn't be alive. Think about that. The brain doesn't know how to do the body. There's something greater than the brain doing it. Science has proven this over and over again. If the brain was alive, they could take the brain and put it someone else and it would work. They can't do that. We understand that we are able to think because it thinks through us. It's not the little mind doing it, it's the big mind that we're tapped into. Now here's the thing about it thinking versus we thinking, is that we control the channel through which the wisdom comes to us. If we stay locked into what we were born and raised with by our parents, by society, by the religion we happen to be brought up in. And here's the thing about religion. Do you know why the Christians in the United States are Christians in the United States? Because they were born in the United States. Do you know why the Muslims in the Middle East are Muslims? Because they were born in the Middle East. The Hindus were born in India. The Buddhists were born in China. You basically are the religion you're born into, and you've never questioned anything about those religions. Ever. If you're here at Agape, you're questioning all of that. And you realize there's no one path. There's infinite paths to finding your connection to whatever you believe and taking control and using your life to demonstrate in magnificent ways. We understand that we are able to act creatively because it, and you notice how I put it instead of he or God? I like it. If it's an infinite mind, I think it is a great term for it. So when I say, people say, hey, he's doing this for me. Who's he? Well, he. Well, what about the great she? Well, it's the he. You hear that in Christianity all the time. It's a he. Well, no, God doesn't have a sex. Next thing you know, you're going to create this gigantic penis out there and think that's God. It's not. Did I embarrass you, Susan? A little shock value to get you to think. But that's what we've done. We've created a being out there and said that's what we're worshiping. No. Do you know what the word worship means? It means the study of God, the study of the infinite. It doesn't mean you get down to your knees and you bow to it. That's the misnomer. We've been bought into all these lies. Worship means studying what the infinite is. How can I be greater connected with it? How can I more fully express who I am? That's worship. It is essential then that we build an open channel of communication so that we can be in constant communication with Source. It is the process of both speaking and, more importantly, listening. I go back to Unity Village, 1999. I'm at a retreat there with Gene. It's 5:30 in the morning. I'm jogging around in the back. There's 1,400 acres. It's all wooded. In the back, there's an 9-hole golf course. It's all wooded. There's animals everywhere. It's 5:30 in the morning. It's dark. I'm jogging. I'm having a conversation. This time, I was not very spiritually aware at this time, but I was saying, God. I was out loud. I was saying, hey, buddy, I need to talk to you about where am I going, yada, 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 yada. About 4 holes in, all of a sudden a voice within me starts coming out. And I just listened. And all the answers I was asking for were coming from within me. It wasn't a voice out here. It was a voice in here. But sometimes we've got to express ourselves to receive an answer. So here's a tool. We teach this in some of our classes. If you've got an issue on your mind right today, take out a paper and write a letter to God, to Infinite Mind, whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, buddy, here's what's going on, and write down all the stuff. Get it all written down on paper, then stop. Get another piece of paper, then write down, Dear Lee, and write the answer coming from the infinite to yourself. You'll be amazed at how you get your answer to anything you want, because you've opened up at that point to receiving something different than what you've been speaking. It's fascinating how it works. We must go to our mountain, and it's here where we can truly hear the divine message we are seeking. If you go to all of the great spiritual teachings, Moses went where? Up to the mountain. When he went to the mountain, he came down with, they say, the 10 Commandments. Moses went up. He went up and connected to the infinite nature of what he was, and he connected with divine wisdom, and that gave him the keys he felt to live his life. But we have taken the story and we have made it manly and created all these things. And so if you just metaphysically look at the commandments, and it's, thou shalt honor thy father and mother. What does that mean? It doesn't mean honor your parents. It has nothing to do with your parents. It means understand that you have a masculine influence in your personality. Understand that you have a feminine side to your personality. And when you live with the masculine and the feminine energies in balance, you will be at peace. You have to be intellectual and feeling, and you have to balance those together to be at peace. When one's in control, you're out of control. So there's ways of looking at it. And so Jesus, they would talk about Jesus going up to the mountain. What did he do? He was going to a higher state of consciousness. It wasn't the physical thing he was going to. When they talk about the great gurus going up in the mountain into the cave, they're really talking about him going up into a higher state of consciousness, putting aside what's happening and living from that. You do not have to go to Mount Kailash. You don't have to go to a mountain. You just have to set an intention in your own mind that I'm going to tap in to something greater than me that I am a part of. Did you hear that? Greater than me, but I am a part of, which means you're not less than anything. No one is better than you. No one is less than you. Everyone is different than you, and that's how it's meant to be. Let's pray.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask that you go to our website, agapecsl.com. Once there, click on the donate button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. Or if you would like, text your gift by simply dialing 972-532-6976. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to you in the world. I would ask that if you like this message, to please subscribe to my YouTube channel under my name, Lee Wolak. Again, I want to thank you for joining me in the Agape community as we learn how to better self-love through conscious living.